Well, you can do it. My website is being redone at the moment. So if you look at it, it's not what it will be.
Okay.
That's the first thing. I'm easy to reach through email, through Facebook. I'm not on Instagram, although people keep telling me I should be. But it's like you said, it's just another thing. And then I just am not ready for that yet. I don't know. I don't look at work if someone sends me an email and says, will you look at my work and tell me what you think? I don't do that. But if you want to direct me to your work, that's different. I will generally look at it. But I make my living working with photographers, which means that I need to be paid.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah. It's better to say.
But yeah, and I have a Facebook page. So that's about it.
Stella Kramer
I'm easy to
reach. Let's say.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my email is info@stellakramer.com. So it's easy to remember, to reach. If you want to know more about what I do, you can Google me.
Yes.
You'll find a whole lot of stuff. And eventually my new website will be up and running.
Okay.
Hopefully in the next 2 months, maybe.
Okay.
I can't guarantee that because I've been trying to get it up for a while.
Excellent. I love the Stella Zine. Make me laugh. The name make me laugh.
I've used that name for a long time for different things I've done. I may be working on something else not a blog, but to bring it back in a different way. Because you have to keep reinventing how you do things.
Yes.
In order for me to be interested, and also to keep people, interested in it also. So a blog to me just seems really dull and boring. And it's really hard. Doing a blog is really hard because once again, you have to do it regularly, and that's hard. That's really hard.
Yes.
So I'm looking for a different way to do things like that.
Have you ever think to do a podcast, for example?
People have been talking to me about that. I hadn't, but I am thinking about it now because a couple of people I was just talking to last weekend. So maybe.
Because I know a lot of podcasters, and all of them are telling me, I'm first of all a listener of podcasts, and because I can do something else without watching. So, for example, I go every day for a walk. So I can hear something and learn something by doing something else. So I'm maybe driving, so I can listen to something that I'm really interested in. And all the podcasters are telling the same, which is it's easy to create. It's quick and easy.
Yes. That's what I've been told. And now that I've spoken to a whole lot of people who listen to podcasts all the time, I didn't realize how much people listen to it. So yes, it is one of the things that I'm thinking about. My first job was in the photo department at Vanity Fair magazine. In those days, you had to keep track of the film that came in. You had to count the amount of film that came in. You had to keep track of who it was from and all kinds of caption information so that you could send it back to them. And it was the first time it ever occurred to me that when you look at a magazine, somebody has to take the photographs. Because I'm not a photographer, and so it hadn't occurred to me. From there, I ended up working at Time Inc., which had most of the larger American magazines, People magazine, Life magazines, Sports Illustrated magazines, and I just started working. And because I have an art background, I turned out to be good at it. So I just kept getting more jobs.
Oh,
that's sort of it went.
What was your study? What did you study at the university?
I studied political science and journalism because I wanted to be a reporter.
Yes.
But that just wasn't happening. And when I fell into working with photography, I love history. And so it was just like sort of a perfect match. And I had been an art student since I was a little girl. My mother was an artist.
Yeah.
And so it turned out I had a good eye for it. So it ended up working out quite well for me.
Oh, right. So your mother was an artist. What sort of artist? A painter, a sculpture, a
She
paint.
worked in most mediums, a painter, she drew, she worked with sculpture, but her whole lifetime. And so when I was a very little girl, I took art classes. We would make art together. And so I learned about composition, and I learned about, how to see things, basically,
All
how to
right.
see visually
And do
as
you
much as her as anything else.
okay? And do you work more with photographers, with single person, or with companies?
Yeah, I work with individual photographers. I work with book projects. I work with websites. I work with projects that are in process, basically.
I did
So
2 or 3 years ago a workshop with I don't remember the name because it's very difficult for an Italian person, but it's a Dutch old lady,
mhm,
and we had to put together our photographs on
mhm.
walls and
Yes, yes.
to be helped by other people to sorting out our pictures, and I came into the workshop thinking that I've got almost my work done.
Mhm.
But at the end, I stopped working on that project because I understood that my um, there was not consistency in my job because I did
Oh,
it maybe throughout 2 or 3 years, and so I didn't kept my the same lens and the same eye level or
yes,
the
yes.
same connection to all the work. So actually, I went there to get my book done and end up to stop with my project
Not doing
and
it.
leave it in a drone,
Ah,
and I start doing something different, completely different. So
ah.
it's really I was very interested in let other people see my job because new eyes are maybe what you need when you have to uh, put out your work. That's
Oh, I completely agree that it's really, really important for photographers to have outside eyes look at their work because you lose perspective when you're so deeply involved with it. And what you think is something that's good, or you're attached to an image because of the experience of it, but it's not necessarily the image that's really great. And so it's really important to have somebody, especially someone who knows what they're talking about, because a lot of times your friends will say, oh, no, it's wonderful. Or your family will say, oh, that's so wonderful. I have photographers who say, oh, but everyone likes this one. And I'll say, well, who is everyone? Oh, my mother and my best friend. And I'll just say, no, 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 no. No, so you need someone who can be, who is not involved in the image and involved in the story so that they can have an objective point of view and help you to see what you're doing in a clearer way.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And as I said, it's I went there just to have the job done, and I stopped it. So it's very
Yeah.
curious to hear other people. I mean, people that knows about photography or knows about visual art, what they think about your job. And so I will pick it up again because it's a place I started in a series of pictures close to where I live, so it's very easy to reach the place and go back and see the places in different lighting and different situation. So it's very easy for me to get there, but I stuck to do it, and it's very curious because I don't go forward with that. Um, but
But
let's
that nothing is ever over.
yeah.
You can always, I know photographers who have revisited projects that they thought were finished and they've added on to it, or they've changed it around because they have a different perspective, they mature in it, about it. So anything that's creative is always there in the ready when you're ready to go back to it. That's what I think.
Yeah, I love your straight way to think. So you go to the point.
Yeah.
I really love
That's
that.
That's because I'm a New Yorker. I
Uh,
grew up in New York, and that's
yeah,
the way.
that's. I think it's part of it. It's true, but I think your I don't know, your personality is also what a photographer needs to get
Mhm.
as a consultant, because you are very so that's the way. You know the
Yes,
way how to handle with people, I suppose. I saw a lot of your courses, and
on the.
I follow you by of course online, because I'm in Verona
Uh,
and you are in New York. But
uh-huh.
I always saw a very clear vision. You have a very clear
Yes,
vision of other works.
yes, yes. And I don't want to waste somebody's time, and I don't feel that if they come to me, they want to hear what I have to say. They've maybe talked to other people, or they've shown it the work to other places, and so they don't want to hear the same things from me. And I also just feel that truth is very important. That you can tell someone the truth, and you can say it in a way, you don't have to hurt anyone's feelings, you don't have to be mean, but you can help them to see. I don't always agree with photographers, they don't always agree with me, but I just ask people to just listen, hear it, and then maybe somewhere down the line it makes sense to them. I've had that happen where somebody will come back to me saying, "Oh, we talked 6 months ago and I didn't even know what you were talking about, but now I get it."
Yeah,
So I think truth is very important,
absolutely.
and clarity.
Yes.
Because I know for myself, I don't want to, if I ask somebody about something, I don't want to hear them tell me what I already know. I don't want to hear them be nice to me because they think they need to be nice to me. When you ask
Absolutely.
someone else, when you ask someone for their opinion or their experience, you have to just be willing to hear it. You don't have to agree. A lot of times I will have disagreements with photographers, but ultimately the work is theirs. And so they make the final decision. I just want to give them perspective that they might not have thought about.
Yeah. I understand that because of the experience with the workshop I did, and the other
Yeah.
person sorted out my picture in a completely different way. I've got two set of pictures. The one is was printed in A4 and the other in A3, and she folded and make a book that I didn't recognize it.
Uh-huh.
Actually, it was very curious.
That can happen.
Yeah, it's
That
very.
definitely can happen. Yeah.
And so
But but sort of the fun, that's the fun part of creativity to me. That each person sees things in a different way, and sometimes their way is going to be much better than your way,
yeah,
or just much more interesting. And I think that's, if everybody saw things the same way and had the same feeling, how boring is that?
yeah, absolutely. I agree with you.
That's what's great about creativity and art, is that everybody brings themselves to something and has something, has their own take on it. And I encourage that.
Yeah, it's like saying seeing 10 different photographer taking pictures to the same subject, and see the differences, how they approach to the subject in such different ways, because they have
Mhm.
different stories behind them, of course.
Yes.
I
Yes.
started as actually as a freelance photographer for a magazine, for a newspaper
Oh,
here in Verona, and so we got a lot of in common, because I started,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm really curious to know from you how you feel the was changed the job in the newspaper and magazine world.
Yeah. Well, here in America,
Yeah,
there's barely any outlets anymore, any places for photographers, magazines, newspapers. You still have the large newspapers here in America, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, but the smaller newspapers, not so much. And magazines, wow. So that I don't work with them anymore because, number one, they won't hire me. And number two, there's very little call for that. There's much more online work, in terms of, every newspaper and every magazine has an online presence. But, like a lot of things, they look for people who are younger, don't have as much experience, that they can pay less money to. They don't have the same attitude about quality of image as much as they just want an image.
Yes.
So that's really hurt. That's really hurt things for photographers. In the art world, in the photo art world, there's a lot more outlets for people, both online. There are some specialty print magazines. Galleries are very difficult. I mean, here in New York, it's almost impossible to get your work in a gallery unless it's a smaller or a more unique type of a gallery, because it's a financial thing. The galleries need to make money to pay their rent. They can't take on young or unknown photographers like they might have been able to do in the past. So it's really much more on the photographer to promote themselves. It used to be you could call up a photo editor, or you could make an appointment with a gallery owner, and you could show your work, and good chance something would come of that. It's just not like that now. But you do, on the other hand, you have the online, you have social media, Instagram, you have a bunch of different outlets. And so the possibility of promoting yourself, of getting where you'd like to get as a photographer, is still there. It just takes a lot of work and a lot of constant work. And not everybody can handle that.
Yeah, I cannot, for example. I'm not very consistent in social media, because I prefer actually the offline event, and I prefer to get in touch with people in live event rather than offline.
Yes.
Much better of online. Actually, I have also other friends that come from Rome or from outside Italy, and that's online. It's the only place where we can get in touch and keep in touch. But actually, if I can, I do a offline job and workshop, for example, if I can.
Yes, I agree. It's much better to do things in person. But it isn't. But at the same time, we would never have connected if there wasn't Skype, or whatever. So there's always the good and the bad. But I agree with you. I have a lot of trouble keeping up with putting myself out there, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It is. Yes, I know.
Maybe, I want to decide when I spend the time on the social media and when not. And if you have to be consistent, you don't have the choice. I mean, you have to be there every single evening, and
Yes.
and then I don't really like to post a comment just because I have one more follower. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
I really appreciate my time. I want to spend my time much better.
Mhm.
And if I leave a comment, it's because I really like the picture, and I give also the motivation because I like it. If I don't have the time to say why I like the picture, rarely I leave just a like or an emoticon, because it's so. I mean, what I think is that the photographer is alone when he shoots, and wants to have a feedback of her or his job. So if you just say I like it, okay, it doesn't tell anything to me. I really appreciate that you love my job, but I don't know why you like it, and what's the element that gives you more emotion, or what's the maybe you understand the story differently. For example, I took a picture of flamingos in a place here in northern part of Italy, and I sent the picture to a contest. It was a picture taken with a very like an iPhone. It was very beautiful light, but very poor gear with me. I wasn't there for taking picture just to have a walk. But I saw the picture, I took the picture, and I posted. and a friend of mine put a comment and said it looks like a pentagram of the birds were
Oh,
such in a way that it looks like they were a musical note, in a
uh,
pentagram.
uh,
It was very,
uh-huh.
very like a design picture, but it was very easy to do it because I was in the
They're
right
just
time at the
there.
right place, and
Uh-huh.
so and I won the awards of the contest with that picture because I put the right capital underneath
Uh-huh.
with
Uh-huh.
flagons as a musical note. It was very curious to have this extra information of a picture of mine because actually it turned out to be my capital at the end, the
Uh-huh.
title of the picture.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh.
I wasn't thinking of it when I took the picture, but someone
Well,
else
that's good.
showed me a different way
Mhm.
of looking at it. Probably she was a musician. I don't remember
Oh,
because
there you go. There
yeah,
you
I've
go.
got I've got a lot of musician friends. I don't remember the one
Uh-huh.
he makes the comment. How people, because it's a question that people always is asking to me, and I would like to ask it to
Yes.
you to know when I'm ready to be a photographer.
Well, that's a hard that's a hard one. Yeah, that's a hard one. You have to shoot a lot. And that's sort of determined by how much you photograph. If you just take pictures every now and again, it's going to take you longer to build a body of work because that's what you need to be able to then approach someone and say, I'm a photographer, hire me. Whether it's with a magazine, whether it's with an individual, an organization, whatever it is. So you have to photograph a lot. You need to start thinking when you're photographing about what you want to do with your work, because that might help you focus your work in a different way. If you say, I want to photograph, products, I want to be a commercial photographer. Well, then there's things then you don't want to be photographing, landscapes maybe. Um, so you have to do that. I really recommend people look at a lot of photography, not to copy it, not to shoot like the person, but just to start understanding the kind of imagery that is out there. Everybody with a cell phone can call themselves a photographer, and some of them, they get work from their Instagram accounts. But the thing about being an actual photographer is that you can recreate the visual imagery over and over and over. It's not just that, oh, you take a picture because it's pretty or you're on vacation and you see something nice. You have to be able to really find what makes your images unique. And then you need to get some feedback from other people. Hopefully, there are a lot of portfolio reviews. There are lots of ways to get professional, photography clubs and organizations where you can get that kind of feedback to let you know if you're ready, even if it's a part-time thing, to become a part-time, a professional photographer. The other thing is you need to learn about the business. You need to understand the business. You need to understand contracts, copyright, licensing fees. You need to learn all of that because you don't want to. I see this all the time. A photographer, somebody approaches them because they saw some of their work and they're like, I don't know what to charge. They're using it for all these things I didn't know about. What do I do? You want to learn about the business beforehand. That makes the possibility of your being successful so much greater. Because if somebody likes one photo of yours and wants to give you $50 for it, 50 American dollars, or they want to use it, in their newspaper or their magazine, and you're so excited that you say yes, and then really it should have been much more money. You needed to discuss how they were using it for how long. There's a whole lot involved in that. And too many people who think they're photographers now don't learn about the business. And it hurts everybody. If you will accept free, if you will allow somebody to use your photo for free for a book or on television, you're hurting everybody else who works professionally, because if they don't have to pay you, why are they going to pay someone else? And once you allow people to use your work for free, in not every situation, but in a situation where a company who has a lot of money uses your work for free, they will never pay you for your work. If it's a specialty photo magazine and they're not making money and they would like to showcase your work, that's fine, that's different. But when it's a huge Pepsi-Cola wants to use your photos for free, they'll never pay you, and they have way lots of money and they should be paying you. So it's two things. It's learning the business, and it's building a body of work. And if you're not interested in being professional, you just want to be a very involved amateur, and I work with people like that, then what you want to do is you want to find a situation where you can get feedback so that you can get better at what you do. And then, with websites now, you can sell prints on your websites. There's all kinds of stuff you can do that way. You don't have to consider yourself always professional. But like I said, everybody's got a cell phone thinks they're a photographer. So you're competing against that. And that's can be very tough.
Yeah, it's true. I agree with you. And actually, when I started, it took me a long time to understand all the technical stuff, because I used to print everything, but I couldn't do it immediately. So nowadays, you can understand the technical part very quickly, but you have to take your time to understand the other harder part of the job, which is the business, which is your vision, your composition, your what you like, what you want to transmit to the people with your work. Because I don't think that you need another sunset.
I agree.
We need to see other things and in a new way. And probably the more you see, for example, I go twice a week. I'm very happy to live in Verona because I've got the possibility to go to Venice very often. And I decided 2 years ago to start my business to set my business in a different way, and I take photo tours in Venice.
Oh, wow. Huh?
And I love it so much because I have to wake me up very early, which is it's a very tough job for me. But it's a way to go out of your comfort zone. And I go to Venice twice a week to teach people how to most of the time how to compose a picture. I don't want even touch the technical stuff. I want to let them to concentrate on the composition, because composition for me is everything. It's the key point in the nowadays photography. That's my view. I'm not an artistic. I don't like to say I'm an artist. I prefer to be a art worker. So like not an art worker, an artisan.
Yeah, a lot of people have trouble with the word art. Yes, I understand that.
Do you?
See, now I don't take pictures. I don't know anything about cameras. I don't know any of that technical stuff because I didn't need to.
Yeah.
And so, like you, for me, it's the composition. It's saying to people, well, if you take a picture that everybody else takes from the same point of view, what's the point? How can you push past that to find some way to do it differently? Whether it's you lie on the ground and you shoot up, or you come very close to something. But, we don't need more sunsets. We don't need more pictures of monuments, anything like that. You have to think of how can I do it, or what can I do to make it something that people haven't seen before? And here in New York, anytime people are photographing, they're photographing the same, the Empire State Building, blah, 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 blah. but every now and again, somebody does something different.
Yeah.
And that's the exciting thing. And that's the person that I think has the ability to make themselves into a professional photographer if they choose that. But when everybody, it takes the pictures that go on Instagram and then everything looks the same, which is why I tell people to look at a lot of different work, because if you're just going by what you see around you and you photograph in that way, well, that's already there. So why do that? You want to try to do something different.
How
whether it's a technical way that you shoot or whether, it's just the way you compose.
How important is for you, for example, to look at an ancient painter? For example, when I have 2 hours, for example, in Venice, I always go to Galleria dell'Accademia, where it's a very, I love that museum, and there are two places where I go to when I just want to relax and see something really, really cool. And I stay there maybe 2 hours just inside and look at this giant painting of giant people. I mean, painter. And I love it because I always see something differently, and I can see how they use the light, how they use the composition. Obviously, a painter can put the stuff where as he wants, but and we cannot. I mean, it depends on what you do as photography. If you are a still lifer photographer, then you can compose your still life table as you want. But if you are a street photographer, you have to make some different decision. But for example, there are I don't know if you ever been to Venice in your.
Yes.
Did you?
Yes.
And there is a long time ago. Well,
yes.
I'm your photo guide in Venice if you want to come back. And there is a very nice place where a very, very famous painter spent 20 years of his life inside. And when you go inside there, it's called La Grande Scuola di San Rocco. It's close to the railway station. You go inside and you feel you are in another world, and you are with. I'm in Italian and I'm used to it, but sure, it's called the Venetian Sistine Chapel because it's something that you have to see. It's unbelievable, and you have to see it. You have to see what he did there. Obviously, it's about Christ and Madonnas, but I mean, you get the idea of the painter, what he did.
See, I love that. I love painting. I love spending time in museums because before photography, there was painting.
Absolutely.
So the light, composition, all of that is there for you. And I think it's really important to not just look at photography. You should look at all kinds of art, because it's learning how people see. It's learning how things were done before there was a camera, which is, photography is not that old comparative, so looking at, the word is losing me. But looking at painting is vitally important. I mean, you think of painters, you think of Raphael, you think of Rembrandt. Look at the way they used light and the way that they showed emotion within the painting. That's really important for people. And a lot of people don't go to museums. I don't understand that. But a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah.
The energy of painting, even looking at abstract art, you get a sense of energy, and it can really change the way you look at the world. I think looking at abstract art and then doing street photography, there's a real parallel between them, because especially in New York, things are very quick. All sorts of things are going on. And you can get an understanding of that kind of energy from art, not just photography. Because with photography, sometimes people try to recreate what they see another photographer do, but people don't generally do that with painting. They look at painting in a different way. They get inspired by it. They understand things in a different way. And so I agree with you. Spending time in a museum is really, really good for you. Really good for you. It also, the other thing that we haven't mentioned is I always encourage people to write, to keep a journal. Not that you have to write every day and you have to write long things, but you get an idea or you see something that strikes you, you write it down in the book. Because if you do that, you will have constant ideas of what to photograph. You won't be limited by what's around you. You'll get ideas, you'll work out problems that way. And I just think it's a really important part of being a photographer. And it doesn't mean that you have to be able to write, well, or any of that thing that keeps people from putting pen to paper. But to me, it teaches you how to focus your ideas. It gives you ideas, and then it helps you write captions. It helps you write an artist statement just because you become comfortable doing it. So, shooting a lot, going to museums, keeping a book. If you see something that you really love, write about why. Because all of that is just going to help form you as a photographer, as a creative person.
Absolutely.
I really believe in that.
And
I always have a book with me and a pen. And sometimes I write one word, sometimes I write a long thing, but that will give me ideas towards things that I want to write much more about. Absolutely. And it's also good because, if you go to a museum and you see something that you really striking, you can write down the name of the painter, and then you can look at, you can do more work looking at their work, or a photographer. And if you don't have any way to write something down, you can make notes on your cell phone, fine. But the pen to paper, to me, is just like the putting film in a camera or printing. There's a tactile thing that's really important. And I think no matter how much technology we have, it's still important.
Absolutely right. I really think that you have, when it's printed, it's real.
Yeah.
Because
very true.
I started, as I told you, as a photojournalist, and I spent a long time in the Dunkelkammer, sorry, that's German, darkroom, in the darkroom. Sorry, okay. Because I mix sometimes German words and English, and I spent sometimes also 8 hours inside the darkroom. So I started as a printer, a photographer that prints.
Okay.
And now when I don't see stuff printed, for me, it's like it doesn't exist. The picture doesn't exist until it's real. That's what I think. So
the other thing about that is you never print your work. You're not creating an archive of your work.
Absolutely.
And I know photographers who didn't print their work at the time they photographed it and have missed out on being represented by museums or galleries because they want prints made at the time. Now, you don't have to do everything, do every image you've taken, but it is important to have an archive that's not just digital.
Absolutely.
Because for museums and galleries and collections, they want the paper. They want something they can put in a frame that has quality. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I definitely agree.
Do you agree?
Most people I know have wonderful...
Wonderful?
No, I was going to say most photographers I know have wonderful stories about time they spent in the darkroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
For me too. I started very young I started in a darkroom when I was 20. So now I'm 52. So, but I left the darkroom very late. So I kept my darkroom so long as I could, and then I have to dismiss it. But till 2006, for example. So I tend to stay in the darkroom as long as I could. So
the darkroom became a real. There were dark rooms in the city. There were tons of photo darkrooms and everything, and people found camaraderie. They got to talk with other photographers. They got to learn things. They got to spend time in their own heads, which is something that people don't seem to like to do anymore. So they have headphones all the time everywhere they go, and they're always listening to something else. But, spending time with yourself in that way is quite important, and it does develop you as a creative person.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So even people who don't shoot film anymore still are missing that.
I do.
And some people went back to shooting film because of that, because they love the process itself.
The smell, the process,
Oh yeah.
and how you have to invent something to get what you want, because sometimes your film is underexposed or overexposed, and you have to cover with your hand or build something just to achieve your goal, or you have to project the film on a wall to have a big size. All this stuff, or you have to wash a lot because if it's not well washed, the chemical can spoil the print after maybe years. But actually, or probably the picture will take more. It's worth in years much. Increase the worth the worth. Is that correct? In years. I took a picture in '94 of two old ladies at a fountain. They were washing their laundry here, very close to my studio, and it was very. It was like seeing two men in a bar taking a beer. They were. It was like being in a saloon and taking and talking to each other and have a place where to have a contact. And it's another picture I will show you, because it's really nice, and it looks. I know we are in Italy, but it's not very common that in '94 people go to the fountain to wash their stuff, but. It was just a tradition of the old ladies to go there just to keep in touch and say 2 words about the weather or about the family, and etc. etc.
Well, that's really important, because things like that, they disappear.
Yeah,
and you can keep that alive.
Yes, and that's
if you take a picture.
It's an historical moment.
Right. Well, right. Yeah.
It's not anymore. So it's
absolutely.
Yeah, it's
somebody was talking about this online, about how in the city, how kids used to just go out and play. They weren't with their parents. They just did all, climbed up on things and did whatever, like when I was a kid. And now, no, you never see children out on their own. You never see them doing things like that. They're always told, no, don't do that. Don't climb that. Don't do that. And luckily, there's all these photos showing kids just being kids.
Absolutely.
And thank goodness somebody took the pictures and printed them and put them out there. Because otherwise, kids today would they would never believe that you could just get up in the morning, run out of your house when you're 6 or 7 years old, and come back for lunch. And your parents, whatever they're doing, it has nothing to do with you. You're out with your friends and you're climbing and you're just playing.
Yeah.
Kids today would never believe that, because their lives are just totally different. They're not allowed to do those things anymore.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
So
it's good, important to document stuff like that.
Yeah, it's I think there is a sort of documentary level of the photography. There are many levels, but one is absolutely documentary and historical, has an historical aspect. I would like to know if there is any. Which are your favorite visual artists, or if there are any, or if if it's not
There
so
are
important.
so many.
Yeah.
There are so
Just
many.
say to me three. I just want to know it because I want to check it out.
Okay. Well, it depends on the type of photography. If we're talking photojournalism, then I would say James Nachtwey is maybe the ultimate. Sebastio Salgado.
Yeah.
If we're talking the natural world, David Dubélé is an underwater photographer, and his work is it's amazing. It's just amazing. See, I like all kinds of photography. So I have a friend named Jason Florio, whose work is I think is extraordinary. He's based in Gambia in Africa.
Africa.
Yeah, I did a book with a photographer named Robert Herman, and his New York street photography I just think is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. A lot of guys, a lot of men. Interesting.
No, woman.
And then, no, there are women. Believe me,
there are women.
Well, there are. I mean, documentary. I would say Carol Guzzi, Paula Bronstein, Nicole Tung. I really love all their work, and I think they're just phenomenal photographers. I would say, I'm looking around my room because I have a lot of photography.
Yeah, I see it.
Yeah, a lot more than that. Jeanette Beckman is a fantastic photographer. Her portrait work, she photographed the music scene in England. She photographed the early hip hop scene here in America. She's amazing. She's amazing. And then there's just like so many other photographers who do one thing or another, whose work I really love. There's a photographer named Jennifer McClure who does very personal work that's really beautiful, really, really beautiful work. She has a book that's going to be coming out soon. And then a photographer that I've known since she was 15, her name is Isadora Kosofsky. Okay. She's a documentary photographer, Kosofsky. She has a book on its way out. I'm going out to Los Angeles to do a book talk with her. Her involvement with the people that she photographs is so deep, and her compositions, and she's extraordinary. I found her work when she was 15, which blew my mind because it was so sophisticated and so well done. And she works, basically, she's interested in people who are generally not photographed. The book that she has coming out has to do with a love triangle between people in their 80s and 90s. One person is 90, the other two are in their 80s, and it's amazing. Oh. It's just amazing.
I saw it in your Facebook page.
Yeah. She's really an extraordinary person, but she's also just like such a wonderful photographer in how she interacts with people. And then she just has an amazing sense of composition. Boy, okay. I'm telling you, the first time I saw her work, I was judging a competition, and I chose her as one of the winners. And I asked the museum, who is this person? Put me in touch with them. And they went, oh, well, she's 16. I'm not sure. And I went, what? And then I talked to her. And I was just astonished. And then I spoke with her, and she says, well, really, I'm 15.
Wow.
And it just was mind-blowing that she was so young and so visually mature. And so I've worked with her off and on over, it's maybe been almost 10 years now. So my interests are all over the place. But I believe a great photo is a great photo. It doesn't matter what the genre is. It doesn't matter the age or the whether it's a man or a woman or where they're located in the world. I just really like photographers who find a unique way of photographing something, because we've all seen everything. So if you can do something different, I want to look at it. So that's just a small amount of people I like. There must be hundreds.
Hundreds. Yeah,
Hundreds.
I wrote it down, so I will check them
Yeah.
out. Some of them I know it. I know them, but I mean Sebastião Salgado. Maybe it's
Of,
the most
of course.
famous that
Yeah.
at least
Yeah.
I know. And
Well,
so
I first saw one of his images. It so changed the way that I looked at the world. He has an image of gold mines in Brazil, and all of these people are climbing up, and it was like looking at ants, and it just shook me because I had never seen something like that, and it made me start thinking much more. So, that's to me what a great photograph will do. It'll connect with you in a way that you would never have imagined, and it'll stay with you.
absolutely, and make you think something differently.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or feel.
Or feel something differently.
Sometimes it's just a feel. Mm-hmm. Same thing about painting.
Yeah.
A great painting will do the same.
Which are the most common mistakes that photographer does?
Oh yeah. Copying somebody else.
Copying? Okay.
Yes. Copying someone else. Not thinking. And I know that sounds weird, but a photographer who thinks about what they do, I can see that in their work because it has a depth to it that when they're just shooting, it doesn't have. I also really hate if people are shooting digital when they're editing and deleting work as they're going. I don't think you should ever do that. I think you should shoot, maybe even take some time before you look back at the work, but never edit while you're doing it. Never start looking at the back of your camera and deleting the work because you probably will lose some wonderful work that way. So I hate seeing that.
Well,
yeah, I see people do that all the time, and it just drives me crazy
because
because they are losing good work that way.
I use digital as analog. I see it at home most of the time. I don't look at the back of my camera.
That's really important. Yeah,
I do.
The other thing is shooting like 12 times the exact same thing because you'd think you didn't get it. If you didn't get it, you didn't get it, but you're not going to get it by doing that. Like I will see people show me their work and it'll be the same tree, the same angle, the same, maybe a little difference in the light, and they'll just keep shooting it. And I don't get that. I mean, at least go from a different angle, shoot it in a different way, but to do the same thing because you don't think you have it, that's a terrible mistake.
Okay.
Professional photographers don't do that, but amateur photographers do it all the time, and it really is bad for them because it means that they're not thinking, they're not seeing.
Well, actually,
they're just shooting.
Yeah, actually, it's distracting me. That's why I don't do it. And maybe I check it out if I have maybe something that I cannot repeat with people. So if I have to have open eyes because of the digital delayed, I cannot be sure as in analog. I was shooting much less in analog because I was really sure of my result because it was exactly the time of that I choose. And with digital, there is a little delay, and that's changed the moment that I choose, and that's what I don't like of digital. I hate that part. Unlike other